It's my 68th birthday, though the air around the table feels colder than a winter funeral. The dining room is packed with relatives and a few neighbors. My son invited people I hardly know, but who now sit comfortably in my house, their voices mingling with the clink of wine glasses. The table centerpiece is simple, a ceramic vase filled with wildflowers, the kind my late wife loved to gather by the roadside. Tonight, though, they look strangely out of place, almost mocking me with their forced cheer. On my chair rests an ordinary brown folder, the edges worn, the cover stained by years of dust. To anyone else, it would look like a pile of forgotten bills. But I recognize the delicate handwriting on the label, my wife's. Even though she has been gone for 8 years, seeing those loops and strokes feels like she has just touched me. A shiver runs down my back. The room erupts in laughter as my son raises his voice. "My father," he announces, lifting his glass, is a man with nothing left. His words echo louder than the clattering forks. For 3 years, he and I have barely spoken more than a handful of words, the gap between us growing deeper than the cracks in the old plaster ceiling above. I worked my whole life, 20 years in the factory, 10 more as a night watchman, yet he calls me worthless in front of friends and kin. Early stakes hang heavy in the air. Humiliation, betrayal, and the unspoken truth that he wants me gone, stripped of dignity and home alike. My chest tightens, not from age or illness, but from the sharp sting of a son's betrayal. Still, I remain silent, my fingers brushing the corner of the folder under my chair. I glance at my grandson across the table. He avoids my eyes, fiddling with the spoon in his hand. My son smirks, proud of his cruel performance. The laughter around me feels rehearsed, as if they all agreed beforehand to laugh louder than my silence. But I know something none of them expect. The folder beneath my hand, so ordinary, carries a weight heavier than gold. And tonight they will see it. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My son stands smirking, his wine glass raised higher. "Let me prove it," he says, and before I can react, his hand darts into the pocket of my jacket hanging on the chair. He pulls out my old leather wallet, cracked, faded, and nearly as weathered as my own hands. The wallet is light, barely holding a few coins and a worn photograph of my wife. He flips it open theatrically, flashing the emptiness to the entire room, as though he's pulling off a magician's trick. "See," he crows. "Nothing. Not even enough for a cab ride home. This is the man you all call the head of the family." Laughter bursts again, though some chuckles sound forced, nervous. My face grows hot, not from shame, but from the sting of betrayal. I had saved that wallet for sentimental reasons, not wealth. My late wife's perfume still lingers faintly on its leather, a ghostly reminder of Sunday walks through the market when she would tuck the day's receipts neatly inside. That scent hits me even now, hidden beneath the ridicule. I remain quiet, folding my hands in my lap. Silence has its own way of speaking. The old factory foreman once told me, "When they mock you, don't rise. Wait, and the truth will stand taller than the tallest liar." Those words echo now, keeping me steady as my son shakes the wallet like a trophy. Across the table, a neighbor whispers to another, "Why is he doing this? It's cruel." The comment drifts through the air, landing in my ears like a lifeline. Not everyone is blind to his cruelty. My son's wife joins in, her eyes glinting with cruelty. "Maybe we should buy him new shoes for his birthday," she sneers, pointing at my worn leather pair. Though he couldn't even afford the polish. The table erupts again, but this time the laughter cuts like broken glass. I stare at my shoes, polished every Sunday by hand, as my father once taught me, using wax melted gently over a flame. Few know that trick anymore, an old folk method from the countryside. They see poverty. I see tradition. I let the silence hang longer than feels comfortable. My grandson fidgets, clearly uncomfortable. His fork scrapes against the plate, a sound louder than all the jeering. I catch his eyes briefly, and for a split second I see hesitation, doubt flickering against the laughter. Inside, I feel the folder beneath my chair like a hidden heartbeat. It contains more than a deed. It contains years of sacrifice, proof of the life my wife and I built brick by brick while my son sneered from afar. They think this wallet proves my emptiness. They have no idea what waits inside that folder. I almost open my mouth, but I stop. Timing is everything. A fisherman doesn't yank the line at the first tug. He waits until the fish hooks itself. Tonight, I am the fisherman. My son, drunk with arrogance, is the catch. The clinking of glasses grows louder as he places my empty wallet back on the table like a final nail in a coffin. He leans back, satisfied, as if the matter is closed. But I know better. I thought I was safe letting him make a fool of me. But I was wrong. The laughter around the table fades into a dull roar in my ears. I don't move, don't protest, just lower my gaze to the surface of the polished wood. That's when I notice the folder again, lying innocently on the chair beside me, half hidden under my jacket. To anyone else, it looks like nothing, a stack of old bills ready to be tossed. But to me, the handwriting across the top isn't just familiar, it's sacred. My late wife's hand, slanted cursive, always leaning forward, as if even her words couldn't wait to get to where they were going. Just 3 words written there. House deed copy. Ordinary ink on a common folder, yet my breath catches every time I see it. She died 8 years ago, and still her presence fills this room more than all these laughing voices combined. I run my thumb across the edge of the folder under the table. The paper feels stiff, sealed, untouched. It's strange, the things that tether us to memory. Some people keep jewelry or perfume bottles. I have this, a folder she once pressed into my hands with a trembling smile. "Keep this," she'd whispered. "Not for today, not for tomorrow. But someday you'll know when." The gap between my son and me gapes wider with every passing second. He doesn't notice the folder, doesn't recognize the handwriting. He only sees the emptiness of my wallet, the cracks in my shoes, the slump of my shoulders. To him, I'm already defeated. I sip from my water glass, slowly letting the chill anchor me. Around me, voices rise and fall, jokes ripple, but none of them matter. My focus narrows to the folder, its silent promise steady against the chaos. The old clock on the wall ticks heavily, a relic from the factory canteen where I once spent 20-hour shifts. Each chime reminds me of all the nights I stumbled home with sore hands only to find her waiting with tea. None of those sacrifices seem to live in my son's memory. He laughs louder now, his friends joining in, oblivious to the storm that sits quietly under my chair. I glance once more at my grandson. He stares at me now, not mocking, not laughing, but watching. His lips pressed together, his fork untouched. For a moment it feels as if he can see the folder too, though I know he can't. Maybe he just senses it, the weight of something unsaid. The room feels heavy with smoke, though there's no fire, only the heat of humiliation. I wonder if anyone else feels it. Silence stretches again long enough that people begin shifting in their seats. My son mistakes it for victory, leaning back with a smug smile. But in my mind the folder whispers, "Not yet. Wait." I thought I could endure his cruelty quietly forever. But I was wrong. The taste of silence pulls me backward into years I thought I had buried. I see myself younger, shoulders broad and strong, my hands raw from hauling steel at the factory. Every callus, every scar on my palms was carved in the name of family. I used to come home after midnight shifts, the sound of my boots heavy on the concrete, only to find my son curled under blankets dreaming of worlds brighter than mine. I never woke him, though I longed to. Instead, I'd leave coins on his desk, small tokens, hoping one day he'd understand what it cost me to place them there. But memory cuts both ways. He was 12 when he first shouted that he was ashamed of me. All the other fathers wear suits, he spat, slamming his bedroom door. I stood frozen in the hallway, his words sharper than any blade I'd ever held. That night I took my wife's hand, whispering, "He doesn't mean it." She only pressed her palm tighter, though I caught the wet glisten in her eyes. The years marched forward. University, then marriage, then this very house filled with guests who laugh at my expense. Somewhere along the road, my son stopped being a boy I raised and became a man I hardly know. The gap widened quietly, like a crack in the foundation you ignore until the walls begin to crumble. I glance at my shoes under the table. I remember the day I bought them a pay raise at the factory, a moment of pride. They've been polished and worn, resoled and stitched more times than I can count. To my son, they're old leather fit for mockery. To me, they're years of steady steps that kept him fed, clothed, alive. There's a folk saying from my village, a father's shoes carry the weight of 2 lives. Few repeat it anymore. Maybe no one remembers. The folder's presence presses against my leg, grounding me. My wife had given it to me on our 25th wedding anniversary when we signed the deed together. I can still see her delicate hand smoothing the papers, her voice firm as she said, "Don't let him forget who built this home." At the time, I laughed, never imagining the day would come when those words felt like prophecy. Around me, the laughter swells again. My son pours himself more wine, his friends clapping him on the back as though cruelty were a toast worth celebrating. My throat tightens, but not from fear, from restraint, from the knowledge that the past I carry is heavier than all their sneers combined. I look at my grandson once more. He's not laughing. He's studying me with the quiet eyes of someone trying to solve a riddle. Perhaps he sees the gap. Perhaps he wonders why the man everyone mocks doesn't fight back. If only he knew this silence isn't weakness, it's the pause before thunder. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The chatter swirls like smoke, thick and choking. My son leans back in his chair, drunk on pride, while his friends laugh louder than the wine deserves. That's when I feel a tap on my shoulder, light, hesitant. I turn and it's Mr. Fan, my neighbor from across the street. His eyes flick nervously toward my son before leaning close enough that only I can hear. "He's not finished," Mr. Fan murmurs, voice sharp as a knife's edge. "He's planning something worse tonight. Watch yourself." The words freeze me more than the cold wine sliding down my throat. Worse. What more humiliation could my son possibly summon? I nod once, slowly pretending to adjust my napkin so no one sees our brief exchange. Mr. Fan straightens, returning to his seat as if nothing passed between us. My heart drums harder, each beat echoing in my chest. Betrayal already suffocates me, yet now a warning, an omen. I scan the table, watching my son laugh, his hand waving broadly as he tells a story about me falling asleep at work, a tale twisted into ridicule. The guests roar with amusement, but in the pit of my stomach, Mr. Fan's words take root like a seed of dread. There's a saying from my village: when the dog barks at night, it's not the wind, it's the shadow, waiting. Warnings carry weight, whether from folk wisdom or a whisper at a crowded dinner. I swallow hard. I shift slightly, letting my hand brush once more against the folder under my chair. Its presence steadies me. My wife's handwriting feels almost alive under my fingertips, reminding me of promises, of strength, of battles not yet fought. I whisper silently to myself. Patience. Timing. But patience grows thinner with every sneer my son throws across the table. He slams his glass down, liquid splashing, and declares, "This house deserves a master who can afford it, not an old man with nothing left." His words cut deeper than the laughter, and I sense the moment tightening like a noose. The air stills for a beat, heavy, watchful. Mr. Fan catches my eye from across the table, his gaze weighted with urgency. My son doesn't notice, he's too busy raising himself higher on the scaffold of his own arrogance. I wonder if anyone else feels it, the tremor under the laughter, the storm gathering just beyond the window. I thought Mr. Fan's warning would prepare me, but I was wrong. My son rises unsteadily, wineglass in hand, and bangs his fork against it until the chatter dies down. The clinking rings sharp in my ears like iron striking iron. "A toast," he announces, swaying slightly to my father, the man with nothing left. Laughter erupts, cruel and eager. Some laugh because they want to, others because they feel they must. My son beams, soaking in the attention, his cheeks flushed with alcohol and triumph. He worked his whole life. He continues, raising the empty wallet high in the air, and what does he have to show for it? Nothing. Not a dime, not a future. Just an old pair of shoes and this sorry excuse of a wallet. I sit frozen, my chest tightening with each word. Across the table, my grandson lowers his gaze. His spoon scrapes the plate softly, a fragile sound against the heavy laughter. It strikes me as the only honest noise in the room. The humiliation settles over me like a heavy cloak. I remember a night in the factory break room when the foreman said, "A man's worth isn't measured by what's in his pocket, but by what's in his heart." But here tonight, all that matters to them is what jingles in a wallet. My eyes drift to the vase of wildflowers at the center of the table. Their stems lean awkwardly, petals curling at the edges. My wife once told me wildflowers last longer if you trim the stems underwater. A small trick almost forgotten. She had a way of making ordinary things endure longer than expected. I tightened my grip on the folder resting against my thigh. Endurance, that was always her word. A hush falls for a moment as my son raises his glass higher, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "But don't pity him," he sneers. "He chose this. He wasted everything. He is the proof that not all fathers deserve respect." Gasps flutter through the room, quickly drowned by forced chuckles. My throat burns. For a moment I feel the urge to shout, to slam my fist on the table, to tear the laughter apart. But I don't. Silence is my shield. Silence is my weapon. I glance at my neighbor, Mr. Fan. He avoids my eyes, but his clenched jaw speaks louder than words. He heard the cruelty just as I did. Yet he stays quiet. Perhaps he's waiting too. The old clock ticks loudly, each beat slicing the silence after my son's proclamation. I sip my water slowly, my hand steady though my heart pounds. Around me, the humiliation thickens, heavy enough to choke on. But humiliation, like silence, can be broken with one sharp sound. I thought the toast was the peak of his cruelty, but I was wrong. The room bursts into shallow applause after my son's cruel toast, but the clapping fizzles, quickly replaced by a strange hush. For the first time all evening, the laughter dies, leaving only the faint tick-tock of the old clock on the wall. That clock, my wife's prized possession, has hung there for decades, its brass pendulum swaying like a heartbeat. Tonight its rhythm feels louder than breath, louder than shame. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over me. Each tick seems to carry her voice, soft but firm. Don't break yet. Wait. I picture her hands winding the clock, humming old folk songs about patience, about how silence itself can speak. The guests shift uneasily in their seats. They expected me to argue, to protest, to rise with fury. But I don't. My son leans forward, confused by my calm. He wants fire, but all I give him is stillness. Stillness has weight more than his drunken words. Across the table, my grandson coughs lightly, the sound sharp in the silence. He stares at me wide-eyed, as if asking why I won't defend myself. I can't answer, not yet. Sometimes a lesson needs the weight of time, like tea leaves steeping in water until the flavor deepens. My gaze drifts to the wildflowers in the vase. A single petal falls, landing silently on the tablecloth. That petal says more than words ever could. Fragility. Time. The quiet collapse before renewal. The silence stretches awkward and heavy. My son fidgets, trying to laugh again, but the chuckle sounds forced, brittle. "What cat got your tongue, old man?" he taunts, his voice cracking in the still air. I take a slow breath, steady and deep. My hand brushes the folder under my chair once more. The paper is cool, unyielding, a reminder that power doesn't always shout, it waits. In that pause, I realize something. Humiliation is fleeting, but the truth inside that folder will last longer than the cruelest word. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The silence clings like fog, and I let it shield me as I slide my hand beneath the chair. My fingertips graze the folder's rough cardboard cover. It feels colder than it should, as if carrying the chill of the grave. Carefully, I draw it into my lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. The edges are frayed, softened by time, but the ink across the front remains firm, my wife's handwriting, house deed copy. My throat tightens. She had written those words the night we signed the papers, her voice trembling with both relief and pride. I remember how she kissed the corner of the page, laughing at her own silliness. "Now it belongs to us," she said, "forever." To her, those weren't just legal words. They were a promise of safety, of dignity. I glance around the table. No one notices. My son is too busy bragging, retelling his version of my life as though I were nothing more than a cautionary tale. His wife nods eagerly, egging him on, while the guests smile, thinly caught between discomfort and curiosity. Their laughter rings hollow now, brittle in the heavy air. I open the folder just enough to peek inside. The paper rustles quietly, but to me it roars. There it is, the official deed, stamped, signed, bearing the familiar curl of my wife's signature. I trace it lightly with my finger, almost afraid the ink might smear after all these years. That small loop at the end of her name feels like her hand squeezing mine once again. The weight of it fills me with both sorrow and strength. They think I am poor. They think I am powerless. Yet here in my lap lies proof that every stone in this house rests on my shoulders, every wall built from years of sacrifice. My wife made certain of it. She knew what kind of man our son was becoming. She saw arrogance growing like weeds in him long before I dared admit it. Across the table, my grandson stares at me again. His young eyes flick to the faint movement of my hands under the table, though he can't see the folder itself. Still, I sense his curiosity sharpen. Perhaps some instinct tells him there is more to this night than cruel laughter and empty wallets. I close the folder softly, pressing it flat against my knee. The timing isn't right yet. To reveal it too soon would be like striking a match in daylight, its flame wasted unseen. No, the deed deserves the darkness to show its fire. I breathe deeply, steadying myself. The air smells faintly of roasted duck and spilled wine, but beneath it, I swear I catch the faintest trace of my wife's perfume, the one with lilac and citrus she wore on our anniversary dinners. Impossible, I know, and yet here it is, curling in my chest like a reminder. Wait, hold fast, the moment will come. I thought holding the folder would bring relief. But I was wrong. The folder rests heavy against my knee, but it's not the paper that weighs me down. It's the memory stitched into it. My eyes blur as the room around me fades, replaced by a night years ago when the house smelled of new paint and fresh cement. My wife and I sat at the kitchen table, this very folder between us, the ink still wet on the deed. She had been frail, then her illness already stealing strength from her body, yet her eyes glowed with determination. She slid the folder across to me with both hands, her fingers trembling, but firm. "Promise me," she whispered. "Don't show this unless you must. Not for petty arguments, not for pride. Wait for the moment when silence alone cannot protect you." I had frowned, confused. Why it's ours? Why hide it? She gave that small, sad smile of hers, the one that always carried more truth than words. "Because one day, he'll test you. He'll test how much humiliation you can endure. If you reveal this too soon, he'll only learn to hate, but if you wait, he'll learn what respect really means." Her words pierced me deeper than any insult my son has ever thrown. That night I promised her. I kissed her hand and said I will wait. She nodded, her breath shallow, and for a fleeting moment she looked at peace. The memory of her perfume, lavender mixed with the faint scent of camphor oil she used for her aches, still clings to this folder. The past releases me slowly, and I return to the present, to the dining table filled with forced laughter and clinking glasses. My son gestures grandly with my empty wallet, still showing it off as if it were a trophy. His voice carries smug certainty. He's finished. He has nothing left but this chair at my table. I rest a hand lightly on the folder hidden in my lap, feeling my wife's presence in every ridge of her handwriting. My promise to her pulses louder than my son's voice. The time is coming, but not yet. She had been right, silence must stretch until it cracks under its own weight. Across the room, the clock ticks steadily. Tick, tock, each sound feels like her whisper, "Not now, soon." I swallow, steadying my breath. My humiliation grows, but so does my resolve. I thought recalling her words would calm me, but I was wrong. My son's voice still lingers in the air when his wife leans forward, her jeweled hand resting dramatically on the table. Her lips curl into a smile that's anything but kind. "Well?" she says sweetly, her tone dripping with poison. "Maybe it's time we faced reality. An old man with no money, no power. What future does he have here?" The room stills. Even the clock seems to pause. Then she laughs softly, shaking her head as if she's offering practical wisdom. Perhaps a nursing home would be better. He'd be cared for, fed, kept out of the way. Gasps ripple down the table. Some guests laugh nervously, others exchange glances. My son doesn't flinch. Instead, he nods, raising his glass again as though her words were scripture. "She's right," he declares. "This house doesn't need dead weight. It needs vision. And my father has none." The blow lands harder than any insult yet. My hands tighten on the folder in my lap until the cardboard bends. A nursing home. After I built this roof with sweat dripping into cement, after I poured every coin into this family's future, to be cast aside like a worn-out chair. My chest aches, but not from weakness, from restraint. From the fire clawing its way up, begging to be released. I sip from my water glass, hiding the tremor in my hand. There's a folktale my wife used to tell about a farmer who placed his aging ox in the barn to rest. His neighbors mocked him, said the animal was useless, but when the storm came, it was the old ox that pulled the cart to safety while the younger ones scattered. She always ended that story with the same words, "Age carries strength no storm can see." I hear her voice now, as if she's here seated beside me, her hand resting gently over mine. The folder presses against my thigh like a heartbeat. I know what it holds. I know what it means. My grandson shifts in his seat, his fork frozen in midair. His eyes flick to me, then to his parents, confusion clouding his young face. He sees the cruelty, even if he doesn't understand the depth of it yet. That flicker of doubt in his gaze steadies me more than any drink. The room erupts again in laughter, but the sound feels brittle, hollow, a glass ready to shatter. I lower my eyes, letting them think I am broken. But inside, the storm gathers strength. I thought her suggestion of the nursing home would be the deepest cut, but I was wrong. The laughter swells again, cruel waves crashing against me, but I stay seated, unmoving. My son's friends clap him on the back. His wife hides her venom behind another glass of wine, and the others force smiles that don't reach their eyes. The humiliation hangs over me like thick smoke, suffocating yet invisible. Still, I say nothing. Instead, I let my eyes drift to my grandson. He hasn't joined the laughter. His small fingers tighten around the silver fork, his knuckles pale. His gaze shifts between me and his father, torn between loyalty and the truth he can already feel. Children see more than adults think. His silence is not the silence of agreement, it is confusion, resistance. I breathe slowly, remembering a lesson from the factory floor. Once a machine jammed and men shouted, panicked, reaching blindly for levers. But the old supervisor, an immigrant from the mountains, simply watched. He waited, studying the gears until he saw the single bolt out of place. With one turn of a wrench, the whole machine sighed back to life. Patience, he told me, fixes what anger breaks. That memory steadies me now. I sip my water, the glass cool against my lips, though my heart pounds like a drum. I let my son mistake my stillness for weakness, my grandson see it for something else. The vase of wildflowers trembles as someone bumps the table. One stem bends, nearly breaking. I stare at it, reminded of another folk belief my wife carried, that flowers bend in storms, not because they are weak, but because bending lets them survive. I trace that lesson inside my chest: bend, do not break. Across the table, my son notices my silence. His smile falters for a fraction of a second, as if he expected me to rise to protest, to shout. He covers it quickly with another laugh, but I see it, that crack. He doesn't understand silence can weigh more than words. My grandson's eyes remain fixed on me. A question lingers there. Why don't you fight back? I wish I could answer him now, but the time is not yet right. The folder under my chair is more than paper. It is the thunder waiting to break. I shift slightly, feeling the cardboard edge dig into my leg, grounding me. My wife's handwriting whispers in my memory. Wait. Don't waste it on anger. Use it when silence cannot hold the truth anymore. I let the silence grow heavier, filling every corner of the room, until even the laughter sounds strained. I thought enduring quietly would shield me from more pain, but I was wrong. The night stretches longer, each laugh sharper than the last. I stare into my water glass. The reflection warped my face, lined with years of sacrifice that no one here seems to remember. Just as I lower it, a hand brushes against my elbow. I glance sideways. It's Mr. Fan again, my neighbor, his expression carefully neutral as he slips something small beneath my napkin. I lower my gaze and see it, a folded scrap of paper. My heart jolts. For a moment I hesitate, then shield it with my palm and unfold it under the table. 4 words scrawled hastily in ink: do not leave yet. Beneath them, smaller letters add, watch what happens. My breath catches. I glance up, but Mr. Fan has already turned away, nodding politely at a joke he clearly isn't listening to. My chest tightens with unease. Why would he write that? What does he know? I fold the note carefully, sliding it into my pocket beside the worn photograph of my wife. Her eyes in that photo seem to study me, questioning, urging patience. The weight of the folder presses on my lap, and now the note burns in my pocket. 2 silent witnesses against the cruelty unfolding. At the far end of the table, my son leans forward, voice booming. This house, he declares, will one day be mine. Everyone knows it. Why keep clinging to the past when the future is standing right here? He pounds his chest. His wife applauds, and a few guests murmur agreement. His arrogance fills the room like smoke in a closed room, choking but unseen. The note's words echo in my head: do not leave yet. My instinct is to walk out, to leave them to their wine and cruelty. But something deeper roots me to this chair. Maybe it's my wife's whispered promise. Maybe it's the steady gaze of my grandson who still hasn't touched his food. Or maybe it's fate moving pieces I cannot yet see. There's an old belief in my village: when crows gather on the roof at night, something hidden will soon come to light. Earlier, before the guests arrived, I noticed 2 crows perched above the porch, silent, watching. I thought nothing of it then. Now the memory crawls back, unsettling. My son lifts his glass again, drunk on his own certainty. He's a relic, he says, gesturing toward me. Tonight we'll settle this once and for all. A chill slices through me, colder than the night air slipping through the cracks in the window. Mr. Fan's warning coils tighter in my chest. Something worse is coming, I can feel it. I thought the note would ease my fear, give me strength. But I was wrong. The guests are restless now, their eyes darting between my son and me as if sensing the storm building. My son slams his glass down so hard the rim chips red wine, spilling like blood across the white tablecloth. The stain spreads quickly, soaking into the fabric as though the house itself is bleeding. He points at me with a trembling finger, his voice rising. Enough of this charade. You sit here in my house at my table pretending you still matter, but you don't. You're finished. The word finished cuts deep, sharper than any blade. The guests murmur uneasily. Some shift in their seats, others lower their eyes. But my son only grows louder, feeding off his own anger. You'll leave tonight. You'll pack whatever scraps you have left, and you'll be gone before morning. Gasps ripple through the room. My daughter-in-law smirks, clearly savoring the moment. She leans toward him and whispers something I can't hear, but her expression says enough. I sit still, my palms flat on the table. The folder presses into my thigh, its edges digging into me like a reminder. Patience, but inside my blood boils. He calls this his house, even though every nail, every brick, every window came from my years of labor. The silence after his words is unbearable, heavier than the laughter that came before. I glance at my grandson. His fork has slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate, but he doesn't move to pick it up. His eyes are wide, almost pleading. Perhaps he doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he knows enough a son is banishing his father. I hear the old clock again, tick-tock, its rhythm steady against the chaos. My wife's voice rises in my memory. Don't speak until the silence cries out for truth. I swallow hard, my throat dry. Every instinct screams to rise, to shout, to throw my son's cruelty back in his face. But I don't, not yet. My neighbor's note still burns in my pocket. Do not leave yet. Watch what happens. Instead, I sit taller in my chair. My son mistakes this for defiance and snarls, his face flushed. You think you can just sit there silent? This is my house now. Get out. The room holds its breath. I tighten my grip on the folder. The storm is nearly here. I thought his command to leave would be his final humiliation. But I was wrong. The words, "Get out," still hang in the air when my son storms from the table. His footsteps thud against the wooden floorboards, heavy, uneven. A door creaks open down the hall, then slams. The guests exchange bewildered glances, whispering under their breath. Moments later, he returns, dragging my old suitcase, the one I keep tucked in the closet. Its leather corners are scuffed, its handle worn smooth by decades of travel. He tosses it onto the floor with a loud thud. The sound echoes like a gunshot. The room falls silent. There, he says, coldly pointing at the suitcase. Pack your things, tonight. Gasps ripple around the table. Someone mutters, surely he doesn't mean it. Another covers her mouth with trembling fingers. But my son means every word. His glare fixes on me, unblinking, merciless. I stare at the suitcase. I bought it when my wife and I took our first trip together back when we were young and still believed the world belonged to us. It still carries faint scratches from train platforms, stains from hurried nights in cheap motels. To me, it is more than luggage. It is memory, love, life lived. To him, it is trash, a symbol of how disposable he thinks I've become. My daughter-in-law laughs softly, breaking the tension. Perfect. He can leave tonight with dignity, she says, though her tone twists the word into something venomous. The humiliation is no longer just words, it has become action. My chest tightens, heat rising in my face. I grip the folder harder in my lap, the cardboard edges biting into my skin. I imagine my wife's voice again, stern and steady. Wait. The moment is near. I glance at my grandson. His eyes are wide, his lips pressed thin. He looks from the suitcase to me, then back to his father. His small hands tremble against the tablecloth. In his silence, I hear what no one else dares to say. This is wrong. The old clock ticks louder, its pendulum swaying like a judge's gavel. Each second stretches unbearable. The guests sit frozen, torn between politeness and horror. Even Mr. Fan shifts uncomfortably, his jaw clenched tight. The suitcase lies on the floor like a corpse in the room, demanding attention, demanding a choice. I thought the slam of that suitcase was the breaking point, but I was wrong. The suitcase sits between us like an open wound, but I don't reach for it. Instead, I breathe deeply, feeling the weight of the folder in my lap. My son stands tall, arms crossed, expecting me to bend to lower my head and shuffle out of the house like a beggar. But I don't move. Slowly, deliberately, I slide the folder out from under the table. The cardboard whispers against the tablecloth as I place it on the polished wood. The sound is quiet, but in the heavy silence it cuts through sharper than glass. Every head turns. Conversations halt mid-breath. My son's smirk falters, confusion flickering across his face. My daughter-in-law leans forward, trying to glimpse the label. My grandson stares at the folder as if it might burst into flames. I rest my hand on it, firm but calm, and say nothing. The handwriting across the cover, my wife's delicate script, is visible now. And though most can't read it clearly from where they sit, I know some can. House deed copy. The words hang silently in the air, unspoken yet unmistakable. A murmur ripples through the guests. Someone whispers, "Is that?" Another guest frowns, shifting uneasily in their chair. Even Mr. Fan narrows his eyes, his earlier warning seeming to fold into a quiet understanding. My son laughs nervously, trying to reclaim control. What's this Bill's old letters? Do you think anyone cares about your scraps of paper? His voice cracks slightly, the first fracture in his confidence all evening. I don't answer. Silence speaks louder than rebuttals. I simply keep my hand on the folder steady as stone. The weight of it steadies me, as if my wife herself has placed her hand over mine. The old clock ticks. Tick, tock. Each swing of the pendulum feels like a countdown, pulling the room tighter and tighter. My grandson leans closer, his lips parting. He whispers, barely audible, "Grandpa, what is it?" His voice trembles not with mockery, but with awe. For the first time tonight, I feel not humiliation, but power. The quiet power of truth, waiting to be revealed. But I don't open the folder. Not yet. Timing is everything. A fisherman never jerks the line too soon. The hook must set deep. So I let the tension stretch thick and unbearable until even the air feels heavy with questions. I thought placing the folder on the table would release the pressure, but I was wrong. My son narrows his eyes at the folder, then bursts into laughter, too loud, too forced. He slaps the table with his palm, sending silverware rattling. "Really, Father, you think some dusty folder is going to save you? Do you think papers mean anything here? No lawyer will side with you. No witness will defend you. You're alone." His words echo through the room, heavy and cruel. He circles the table slowly, glass still in hand, his shadow passing over each uneasy guest. "Look at him," he says to the others, clinging to scraps like a beggar, pretending he still has power. It's pathetic. The laughter he expects doesn't come. Instead, silence spreads. The guests glance at one another, their eyes darting back to the folder on the table. Doubt flickers across their faces. I sit still, my hand resting calmly on the cardboard cover. Inside, my wife's signature feels like a heartbeat pulsing against my palm. My son's words may sound strong, but the cracks are widening. Even he hears it, the absence of laughter. "Pathetic," he repeats quieter this time, but the venom doesn't carry. His wife hisses under her breath. "Finish it. Throw him out." She grips his arm, but even her eyes flick toward the folder with unease. I remember something an old lawyer once told me when my wife and I signed the deed. Paper is silent until it speaks in court. Then it thunders. At the time, I laughed at his seriousness. Tonight, those words feel like prophecy. My grandson shifts in his chair, leaning forward, his gaze locked on the folder. His small hand grips the edge of the table, knuckles white. He doesn't speak, but I can see the question written on his face. Is everything they've said a lie? I breathe deeply, steadying myself. Around us, the tick of the clock grows louder each second, pushing the moment closer. My son finally leans in close, sneering, his breath heavy with wine. "You think you can outsmart me? You think you're stronger than me?" His voice cracks. "You're nothing without me." For the first time all night, I raise my eyes and meet his. Silence stretches between us, heavy as stone. He falters. I thought his threats would weaken me, but I was wrong. My son's sneer blurs at the edges as my mind drifts backward, pulled into a memory as vivid as the ink on the deed itself. It was the day my wife and I first visited the lawyer's office, an old building with peeling paint and the faint smell of mothballs in the waiting room. The lawyer, Mr. Bin, was a thin man with glasses that always slipped down his nose. He had handled countless property transfers, but he treated ours with unusual care. I remember how he placed the deed on the desk, tapping the signature line with his long finger. "This paper isn't just ink and seal," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that silenced even the creaking fan above. "It's your shield. It will protect you when words fail, when loyalty falters, when even family forgets." My wife had looked at me, her eyes tired but glowing with determination. She signed her name, slowly, deliberately, the pen shaking only at the end. Then she pressed the folder into my hands and whispered, "Don't ever lose it, and don't ever use it too soon." The memory of her perfume, lavender mixed with the faint bitterness of herbal medicine, clings to me now, drifting out of the past into this poisoned dinner table. I feel her presence as though she's standing behind me, hand on my shoulder, urging patience. I blink and return to the present. My son's voice drones on his threats louder, his gestures wilder. "No lawyer will side with him," he boasts. "He's nothing but an old man with a piece of paper." But I know better. I can still hear Mr. Bin's words as if he's sitting here tonight. The day will come when that paper will speak louder than any man in the room. I glance at the guests. Their faces betray them, curiosity, doubt, unease. The folder has already begun to speak, even unopened. My grandson stares at me wide-eyed, as if sensing the tide shifting. The clock ticks louder. The air feels electric charged. My son doesn't realize it yet, but the silence around him has changed. He mistakes it for obedience, but it is anticipation. I rest my hand firmly on the folder, its edges sharp beneath my fingers. For the first time tonight, I feel calm. I am no longer the beggar at his table. I am the keeper of truth. I thought memory alone could not shield me, but I was wrong. The laughter has thinned, the air turned heavy. My son is still pacing, still spewing his venom, but the guests no longer cheer him on. Their eyes flicker nervously toward the folder on the table, toward me, toward the silence I've wrapped around myself all night. Even my daughter-in-law's smug grin trembles at the corners. I place my palms flat on the table and slowly rise to my feet. The scrape of my chair against the floor is louder than his shouting, louder than the ticking clock. My son falters mid-sentence, his words dying in his throat. "Sit down," I say, my voice low but steady. The firmness in my tone startles even me. Years of silence have sharpened it into something sharper than steel. No one moves. My son sneers. Why should anyone listen to you? But his voice lacks the conviction it held before. "Sit!" I repeat louder this time, my eyes sweeping across the table. Mr. Fan sets down his glass immediately. One by one, the others follow. Even my grandson straightens in his seat, his young face flushed but attentive. My daughter-in-law shifts uncomfortably but obeys, sinking back into her chair. Finally, I lock eyes with my son. His arrogance collides with my gaze, and for the first time he blinks. Reluctantly, he sits. The room is still. The only sound is the tick-tock of the clock and the faint rustle of the folder under my hand. I take a breath, steady but charged. "You've all heard enough noise tonight," I say softly. "Now you'll hear the truth." The wildflowers in the vase tremble. A petal, loosening and drifting silently onto the tablecloth. My wife's presence feels thick around me, her whispered promise echoing, "Wait until silence cries out for truth." Tonight, the silence has cried. I glance at my grandson. His eyes are wide, glimmering not with confusion now, but with expectation. Perhaps hope. I thought breaking my silence would end the cruelty. But I was wrong. The silence tightens, pulling every gaze toward me. My hand rests on the folder, the cardboard rough beneath my fingers. For a moment, I hear nothing but the old clock's pendulum and the faint rustle of clothes as the guests shift uneasily in their seats. Then, without a word, I slide the folder across the table. The sound is soft cardboard scraping against wood, but it echoes like thunder in the hush. Every pair of eyes follows its slow movement until it stops in the center of the table just beneath the glow of the chandelier. Whispers ripple instantly. Someone gasps. My daughter-in-law leans forward, her painted nails digging into the tablecloth. My son stiffens, his smirk fading into a mask of disbelief. What? What is this?" he stammers, though the label is clear enough for anyone to see. "House deed copy." The handwriting, delicate yet unmistakable, is my wife's. Even those who never knew her well can feel the gravity in those words. The guests' whispers swell, then fade into stunned silence. I don't speak yet. Silence, I've learned, can be the sharpest knife. I let them stew in their unease, their curiosity, their fear. My grandson cranes his neck to see better, his eyes wide with wonder. He doesn't fully understand, but he knows this folder carries weight. My son laughs nervously, trying to salvage control. It's nothing he says, voice too loud. "Old bills, receipts, don't let him fool you." His laugh dies quickly, swallowed by the tension in the room. I lift my hand, hovering over the folder but not opening it. Instead, I let my gaze sweep the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. For years, I say calmly, I have listened in silence. Tonight, that ends. A petal drifts from the vase of wildflowers, landing on the folder, as if sealing it with my wife's blessing. My throat tightens, but my voice holds steady. My son shifts uncomfortably, his chair creaking. The sweat on his forehead glistens under the light. He knows, though he hasn't seen the contents, he knows. The silence of the guests, the trembling curiosity in their faces, it all presses against him like judgment. Still, I don't open it. Not yet. Timing is everything, and the moment has not fully ripened. I let the anticipation stretch thick enough to choke on. The folder sits there like a coiled snake, and everyone waits for it to strike. I thought sliding the folder forward would settle their doubts, but I was wrong. The folder lies in the center of the table, its presence heavier than stone. I draw it back toward me, my fingers steady now, no longer trembling. For a moment I hesitate, hearing my wife's voice in memory. Wait until silence cries out for truth. The silence is screaming tonight. I open the folder slowly. The paper rustles sharp and clear in the heavy air. I slide out the document, its edges crisp, despite the years, the official seal glinting faintly under the chandelier. The gasps begin before I even speak. Just the sight of that red seal is enough to slice through doubt. I lift the deed high enough for all to see. My voice is calm, measured, but it cuts through the room like a blade. This house, I say, is mine. It has always been mine, and here is the proof signed, sealed, witnessed. I place the paper flat on the table, pressing my palm against my wife's looping signature. The silence deepens, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. Gasps ripple down the table. One guest leans forward, squinting at the page. "It's real," she whispers, almost reverent. My daughter-in-law's smirk shatters. Her face pales as she grips the edge of her chair. My grandson's eyes glisten, awe overtaking confusion. My son, though, he freezes. His lips move, but no sound comes out. He stares at the paper as if it were a snake ready to strike. "No," he mutters finally, shaking his head. This can't be." But it is. I tap the seal with my fingertip. Stamped by the registrar. Witnessed by our lawyer, Mr. Bin, my wife's signature mine. This house belongs to me. Every stone, every nail, every corner of it. The weight of the words settles over the guests. Some lean back, ashamed of their earlier laughter. Others glance nervously at my son, who now looks small in his own home. The wildflowers in the vase tremble as a draft moves through the room, one petal drifting down to land gently on the deed. I take it as her sign, her silent nod from beyond. For the first time tonight, I feel the balance shift. Power doesn't roar. It whispers, steady and undeniable. I thought revealing the deed would end the humiliation, but I was wrong. My son stares at the deed as though it were a blade pressed to his throat. The color drains from his face, leaving him pale and hollow. His mouth opens, closes, then opens again, but no words come. The man who only moments ago roared with laughter now trembles in silence. The guests do not laugh. They do not speak. The air is too heavy, charged with the weight of truth. A spoon clinks against a plate as someone shifts nervously, but otherwise the room is still. Even the old clock seems to slow its tick-tock, muffled under the silence pressing in on all of us. I watch my son's hands. They shake his wine glass, tilting until a thin stream spills onto the tablecloth. The dark stain spreads, creeping toward the deed, but stopping just short. He doesn't notice. He only stares at the paper, eyes wide as if willing it to vanish. My daughter-in-law grips his arm, whispering urgently, but he shrugs her off. His arrogance has cracked, split open for all to see. Behind the mask of pride, he is just a frightened boy who has finally realized the ground under his feet isn't his at all. My grandson looks at me with something new in his eyes. Not pity, not confusion, respect. He sees his father's collapse and my silence, and for the first time, I believe he understands the lesson: truth does not need to shout. The guests begin to murmur. One shakes her head, muttering, "All this time." Another looks at my son with open disdain. Their judgment gathers around him like smoke, suffocating. I let the silence hold. Words are not needed now. The deed lies on the table, undeniable, my wife's signature gleaming beneath the chandelier. She is here with me in spirit, her promise fulfilled. My son lowers himself back into his chair slowly, as though his legs can no longer carry him. His hands cover his face. His chest heaves. The man who declared me worthless only an hour ago now hides from the eyes of the very people he sought to impress. I thought his arrogance would never break, but I was wrong. The silence doesn't last long. It cracks under the weight of whispers that swell like rising wind. Guests lean toward one another, voices sharp, urgent, carrying through the dining room, no matter how they try to hush them. So everything he bragged about, it was a lie, one woman murmurs, her eyes flicking toward my son. I can't believe it, another whispers, shaking his head, all this time claiming the house is his, pretending to be the provider. My daughter-in-law sits stiffly, her face pale, her smile vanished. Her jeweled fingers clutch the tablecloth as if she could anchor herself in the storm unraveling around her. My son doesn't look up. His hands cover his face, his shoulders hunched. A man at the far end of the table clears his throat. "I told you," he says to his wife, loud enough for the others to hear. A father builds, a son squanders. His words hang in the air like judgment. Heads nod around the table. The humiliation that once belonged to me has shifted entirely. Now it rests on my son's back, pressing him into the chair he once claimed as a throne. I sit quietly, watching the tide turn. My wife's handwriting on the deed glimmers faintly under the light, a silent vindication. I can almost hear her voice. The truth doesn't shout. It waits. My grandson glances at me again, his lips parting as if he wants to speak, but no words come. Instead, he lowers his gaze, cheeks flushed with something like shame or maybe pride, mixed and tangled in the way only a child can feel. The guests murmur louder. He humiliated his own father, someone hisses. And for what? To hide that he owns nothing. A sharp laugh cuts through the whispers, bitter, scornful. It comes from Mr. Fan. He shakes his head, eyes fixed on my son. So quick to throw your father out, he says coldly. Yet it's you who doesn't belong here. Gasps ripple again. My son jerks his head up, eyes wide, but no words come. His lips tremble and his chest rises and falls with ragged breaths. The judgment has begun, and this time it is not mine to bear. I thought the whispers would fade into silence again. But I was wrong. The judgment sharpens like broken glass. My daughter-in-law, once so smug, now jerks her hand away from my son's arm. Her voice, shrill with fury, slices through the whispers. You told me this was ours, she hisses loud enough for every guest to hear. You swore this house would belong to us. You lied to me, to everyone. Her cheeks flush red, her carefully painted smile twisted into rage. She stands abruptly, knocking over her chair. Do you know what people will say about us now? She spits the words as if they burn her tongue. My son reaches for her arm, but she pulls back, shaking her head violently. I married you thinking you were a man with a future. Instead, you're nothing without your father. The room gasps at her cruelty, but no one rushes to defend him. Neighbors who once laughed at his jokes now turn their faces away. Mr. Fan leans back, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with grim satisfaction. Another guest mutters, he treated his father like dirt, and for what to be exposed in front of everyone. The circle tightens around him, not with fists, but with silence, withdrawal, disdain. Each glance, each whisper strips him bare. Then comes the sharpest cut of all, not from his wife, not from the guests, but from his own son. My grandson pushes back his chair, the screech of wood against tile louder than the murmurs. His small frame trembles, but his voice carries clear across the room. Dad, he says, his eyes glistening, you're wrong. The words hang there fragile yet powerful. My son stares at him as though struck. What did you say? He whispers, voice cracking. My grandson looks at me, then at the deed on the table, then back at his father. He shakes his head. Grandpa built this house, not you. You made everyone laugh at him, but you were the liar. I don't want to be like you. The silence that follows is heavier than any insult. My son's face twists, his lips trembling, his eyes darting wildly as if searching for escape. But there is none. Not tonight. I sit quietly, my hand still resting on the deed, my wife's handwriting beneath my palm. I feel her presence more strongly than ever, her promise fulfilled. Justice has found its way into this room, not through shouting, but through truth. I thought the reckoning would come only from strangers. But I was wrong. The storm has passed, though its echoes linger in the stunned silence. My son slumps in his chair, his wife standing apart from him, arms crossed, fury etched into her face. The guests whisper no more. Their judgment has already been spoken through their silence, through the way they avert their eyes from him and glance at me instead. I rest my hand on the deed one final time. The paper feels warm now, alive, almost as though my wife's spirit still breathes within the ink of her signature. I picture her smile, gentle, tired, yet steadfast, and I know she is here tonight watching this reckoning unfold. My grandson edges closer, his small hand brushing mine. He doesn't speak, but his eyes say enough respect, relief, and perhaps a touch of pride. For him, this night will be a lesson carved deeper than any textbook could teach. That dignity is not measured by wealth, flaunted, but by truth endured. I lean back in my chair, my shoulders loosening for the first time in years. Betrayal has cut me, humiliated me, nearly broken me. But justice has its own rhythm. It does not rush. It waits for the right moment to strike. Tonight it struck with quiet certainty. There's a saying my father once told me, a man can be stripped of his wallet, his shoes, even his pride, but not his worth unless he gives it away. I carried those words silently through decades of labor, through years of estrangement, through one night of unbearable humiliation. And now I carry them into peace. The wildflowers in the vase lean toward the light, a single bloom opening wider despite the late hour. I take it as her final sign, even after Storm's life finds a way to stand tall again. I glance at my son. He does not meet my eyes. Perhaps one day he will. Perhaps not. Forgiveness is a seed that takes time to grow, and tonight the soil is still too cold. But I feel no rage now, only sorrow and a quiet hope that he may yet learn what respect truly means. The guests begin to rise, murmuring their farewells. Some clap me gently on the shoulder, others simply nod shame in their eyes for having laughed earlier. Mr. Fan lingers by the door, giving me a firm nod of approval before stepping into the night. The house feels different now, not just bricks and wood, but a fortress of memory, sacrifice, and dignity reclaimed. I am not leaving. I will never be forced out. This is my home. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.